Good morning and welcome to the Yuba-Water Agency Board of Directors meeting
progress
for February 21st, 2023. Roll call, please.
Director Vasquez, absent. Director Blazier.
Here.
Director Fuhr.
Yes.
Director Bradford.
Here.
Director Messick.
Yes.
Director Bishop.
Here.
Director Matthews.
Here.
Great, thank you. Director Bishop, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up is public comment. Mandy?
Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Board of Directors on any subject matter that is not on the meeting agenda and is within the board's subject matter jurisdiction. Public comment periods are limited to 3 minutes per person, and the total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes. Persons participating by way of video conference or teleconference shall ensure their audio is muted at all times, except when the board chair announces public comment periods. At those designated times, members of the public wishing to speak shall enable their audio and state their name for the record. When multiple members of the public wish to speak, the clerk will determine the order of speakers and announce their names accordingly. To ensure proper conduct, the board reserves the right to mute the audio and video of any member of the public violating generally accepted principles of, and decorum of official public meetings.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment? Okay, I don't see any in the room. Any on Zoom? I can't see the Zoom screen, so. Okay. So with that, we will move on to the consent agenda items. And so there's two items under consent. Any questions or comments from the Board of Directors? Okay, seeing none, any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion?
So move. Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Next, we will move on to discussion items, starting with item 3, receive a high-level overview of the Board of Director policies. Morning, Jim.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Jim Attrition, clerk of the board, among other things. We wanted to take this opportunity since we have a couple of new board members. We did a board policy overview a couple of years ago and figured we might as well revisit it just briefly. I'll just start from the top. I got some notes for you on each of the policies. We're not going to go through all of them. There's 16 of them total. I could have read them all. It would have been really boring and dry. As much as I love policies, and I would totally do that. We're just not going to go through all this today. So we have 16 board level policies. Just a quick brief note. We have, there's board level policies, things that the decision makers at the agency, need to make at that board level. There are other policies like you've seen, HR, there might be HR policies that you adopt, but we kind of work internally how we separate those because they're really department level, policies that we govern at that level. There are also other divisional policies that you guys don't see. So we're going to focus on the main 16 today. I'm just going to go alphabetically. I'm going to give you a brief statement about each one of them, and we'll go through that. These are all available on our website, yubawater.org. Under the About Us page, there is a link to the Board of Directors. Once you hit there, you will see all the information about the board, your names, your email addresses, ways to contact you. And then below that, the board policies are all listed there. So feel free to take a look at those. If you have any questions later, give me a call. I'll be happy to go through any of the questionable things you might have. The first one, we talk about board and staff interaction. This is really the policy that governs the methodology between the board members and communication methods with the general manager, legal counsel, and even staff. So it describes how board members may make requests of agency staff for information related to agency business. However, that policy confines requests pertaining to analysis or work assignments or the prioritization thereof to communications between the board members and the GM. So generally, the GM is the main point of contact for most of the heavy level lift work items. You don't direct the work of staff necessarily. Make requests of us. We'll be happy to comply as quickly as we can. So that's just where the line is drawn. And that's the intent of that policy. We have a budget and finance operations policy. That one's kind of a fun one for me and Curtis to work. Well, mostly Curtis, but we kind of touch on it, both of us. The purpose of that policy is to really provide a transparent and consistent framework to guide budget administration and reporting, personnel allocation administration, and financial audit, which is our favorite time of year. Says no one. Communications policy. Feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions about these. I can talk to them. The communications policy is just what you think it is, effective internal and external communications. It just governs how that work is done. You've heard from Dee Cordell, our communications manager, with the strategic plan for communications. You might recall that. We have a community impact grant and loan program policy, which is really beneficial policy for the community. All of our stakeholders who are eligible for grants and loans can come to the agency by filling out an application, and we have a grant review team that looks at those, decides which ones are eligible and meeting the best criteria for moving them forward to the project operations and development committee, one of your committees, and then they come to the board for final approval. We also have you may not be familiar with this one, a computer use for agency provided computers to board members. This policy was really just designed to establish the framework for any laptop computers that we would give to board members if they needed them. This typically applies to our at-large members, Directors Matthews and Director Bishop, just because they don't work for the county. You guys have county equipment that you don't typically have that. So we needed a policy to govern that in the event you needed one. Excuse me. The next one is the conflict of interest code. Conflict of interest code we just adopted last December, so you may be familiar with that. It just designates the people who have to file a Form 700 statement of economic interest every year, among other things. Moving right along, Director Harassment Prevention Training. This is AB 1825, and requires that directors receive at least 2 hours of sexual harassment training and education within the first 6 months of taking office, and every 2 years thereafter. You're all familiar with that, I think. Director's compensation and expense reimbursement policy. This provides for your compensation, expense reimbursement for for travel, and reimbursements may be for attending events such as JPA meetings, other government agency meetings, conferences, events, AQUA, NAQUA, and so on. There's a process for filling out documentation. Either Mandy or I typically would do that for you on your behalf. Travel forms, expense reimbursement. So it's the message to keep your receipts. Pay attention to what you're doing when you're out at conferences. We reimburse you for your meals, of course, but not alcohol. That's always a big highlight of that policy. We do have a drug and alcohol-free workplace policy that might still be on the website. I want to get that removed simply because that was superseded by a policy that you adopted last year, and I forgot it was still out there. It's under the HR policy provisions now. The energy risk management policy. This is formally established an energy risk management program to document the organizational structure utilized by Yuba-Water to execute, plan, and control the management of a variety of risks associated with the sale of capacity, ancillary products, and energy generated by the Yuba-Water Agency. That's really complex, and I had to write it down because I don't know exactly how that whole thing works, but it's definitely kind of the backbone of how we work with our energy and sales and so on. Of course, we have the policy concerning ethics, the general manager, and related matters. This is really covers mandated ethics training. That's AB 1234. Maybe familiar with it from that title. Responsibilities of the public office, fair and equal treatment provisions, the proper use and safeguarding of agency property and resources, confidential information, etc. So the next one, we have the records management policy, which is my favorite. It includes the records retention schedule. It is a very complex document. As you can imagine, the water agency has records ranging the gamut of very simple, this agenda for today is a record for that we keep in perpetuity.
If I could interrupt.
Yes, sure, Charlie. Go ahead.
When you get to the record management, because of the new technology, records are easier to keep than they used to be in boxes. But if you literally read the management policy, we're supposed to destroy a lot of stuff after just 2 and 3 years. And I think that we as a board ought to review that so that we keep the historical content of what's happened in the past, because we need that for what we might do in the future.
True. Agreed. I think everybody in the room would agree with that. Very good. Thank you. Of course, we have the reserves policy, that's administration of reserve funds. As we look at that, try to look at that every year. Design that. I know that I've had conversation with Curtis Crawford, our Director of Finance, to update that policy, and that's in the works, as I understand. You should be seeing that fairly soon. Rules for proceedings of the board. This is really extensively addresses the various rules that govern board meetings, selection of the chair and the vice chair, the time and place of meetings, and conflict of interest with specific agenda items, hearings, special meetings, and so on. This helps the board, especially new members, if you have a question about how a point of order might work or something like that. Those are all listed in there. Only two more. Almost done. Sponsorship policies, one-time expenditures for publicizing, promoting, or educating about the public about Yuba Water missions, programs, and services. If you're familiar with that, brings their items to you for your approval. The policy limits staff's ability to authorize a sponsorship at $2,500. You'll see anything above that. The statement of investment policy, just like it sounds, this guides the staff about the deposit and investment of agency funds. That is your alphabetical order 16 policies. Are there any questions? If there are none, I have one for you. All right. Mr. Chair, very good. I just want just a quick note as we go through, most of these policies are updated on a every 2-year cycle. That's a little more frequent than typical, but it's perfectly fine. I wanted to ask the board if you'd like to see policies brought to you that staff determine are non-substantive, they're grammatical changes or changes in a procedure that is very minute. Would you like me to bring those to you? And I ask that question because you disbanded the policy review committee, which would normally look at those things. 2023 will have a number of those policies that are due for the regular update. And so far, the couple that I've looked at haven't had one word change. So just curious of what the board's temperature was.
So might it be appropriate to just put those on the agenda under consent with the red line version?
Yeah, and we could do it that way. Yeah, thank you if that helps. So just put them there. And if you guys have any questions,
the board in agreement
for discussion. Okay. There's nothing else. If there's any questions down the road, do give me a call.
Yes, no, I think that depending on what the rest of the board wants to do, we ought to update the records policy because the way it's written now, we're supposed to destroy stuff. I know I've talked to Terry. She said she's not doing it, but we ought to get the policy cleaned up.
Yeah, we don't.
It doesn't look like
the agency is really. Thank you, Director Matthews. The agency is really good about maintaining records of historical significance, obviously, and that's very true. There are still boxes of files that need to be gone through, and making them electronic is one way to store them. In my experience, the best way to store documents like that is in a temperature-controlled environment in paper form. It lasts a lot longer. We use electronic just for ease of access. It's the ultimate.
I know there's services that can take boxes and digitize them for you, and then you can index them afterwards.
Right, that's true. And we had that done a few years back, I believe. Or the clerk had, at least for board records, they were. Okay, very good.
Great. Any additional comments or questions? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Jim. Item 4. Approve loan agreements with the County of Yuba to fund 5 settlement agreements with developers, due reimbursements from the levy impact fees. Morning, Kevin.
Good morning, board and directors. Kevin Mallon, Yuba County Administrator, and then also Three Rivers Levy Improvement Authority Executive Director. So many hats, right? No longer the librarian for the county, though I passed that hat on to Mike Lee. So anyways, the item before you today, let me give you a little bit of background on why we're asking for this loan agreement between the county and the agency. So this actually goes back 15 plus years when the county and the agency and Three Rivers Levy Improvement Authority were actively trying to generate local funds to construct the levy improvements and the RD 784 levy system. And there was a series of things that took place, including the formation of Melrose districts. There were builder bonds. There was a levy impact fee associated with generating revenue to cover debt that the county and the agency took on to cover this local share. And so anyway, so that was structured, 15 plus years ago. And then about 2 years ago, the county, the agency, and Trilla took look at, is there a way to improve upon the financial condition down there? Could we restructure that debt? Could we lower the fees? And so there was a series of kind of like three target areas. One was, can we lower the levy impact fees? Can we lower the annual Melrose burden on homeowners down there? And then the third one, and the reason why we're before you today on this loan, is we had a handful of developers back in the early 2000s that actually contributed more in levy impact fees than they were obligated to. So they advanced funded so that we had enough local money to build the levies back then. And we've been carrying that debt on the books since then. And that debt actually has been accruing at a 5.5% interest rate. So that was one that we wanted to take a look at and figure out, can we restructure that debt? And so we've been negotiating, we meaning the county, the agency, and Trilla, have been negotiating with those 5 developers to kind of settle that debt and restructure it. And so what's before you today is kind of the loan we need to cover settlement of that debt. So what we agreed to with those 5 developers is they would settle for 70 cents on the dollar present value of that debt, which is a pretty good deal for us. And then the county that collects the impact fees, we have about the total debt between these 5 developers is about $1.9 million at the 70 cents on the dollar. The county has about $1.4 million in levy impact fees sitting in an account. And so to cover that gap is why we're before the directors today to secure a loan to cover the $1.9 million so we can settle the debt with those developers. And then the county will repay the agency for future levy impact fee collection. But the terms that are kind of set out in the agreement is that there'd be a minimum payment to the agency of $75,000 a year. There would be an interest rate associated with this loan at 2%. And Curtis, is there any other relevant details? Okay. And anyways, we see this debt being, this loan being paid off in pretty short order. That $75,000 a year on a $500,000 loan. So, and then we'll be able to kind of meet one of those 3 objectives there as far as kind of restructuring that debt that was associated with the advanced funding payment. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any question the directors have.
Any questions from the directors?
I have one, Kevin. So how have you been servicing that debt?
So the debt that was taken on by the county and the agency, it is a portion of it is covered by the levy impact fees collected on new development, and then the other portion has been covered by the agency itself. I'm trying to think of what year we're in on an agreement where the agency, but I think we've been doing 5-year terms where the agency covers the debt service shortfall each year. Any other questions from the directors?
Okay. Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion to.
Okay. Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next up is manager's report.
Well, things are looking good. Based on the weather we had in late December and early January, we still have a great snowpack and good levels in New Bullards Bar, and we have a storm coming in this week. February has been pretty dry, almost record dry up until this week, so maybe this storm will boost us up a little bit. But to summarize, New Bullards Bar is at 790,000 acre feet, which is 128% of normal year to date. We've had 493,000 acre feet of inflow since October 1st, which is 120% of average. I don't have a snowpack summary for you today, but it's good and we'll be getting better Wednesday and Thursday. So things are looking really good there. As far as revenues go, because we had such high inflows in January, we generated significantly more megawatt hours than we had forecast. We had forecast 69,000 megawatt hours in January, and we generated 224,000. That's 223% of the forecast. And we forecasted $5.2 million in revenues, and we received $33.5 million in revenues. So significant amount of additional megawatt hours generated, and the market was pretty strong based on high natural gas prices. We continue with routine maintenance. All the units are running except for the mini hydro. We're doing some work on that unit. Narrows 2 or both Narrows units are putting out about 2,150 cubic feet per second. That will decrease slightly later this week as we manage New Bullard's bar storage. And like I said, we will receive some inflow later this week, but because it's going to be so cold, the precipitation won't likely significantly increase storage. On February 16th, PG&E notified us of emergency line work they needed to do on their 60 kV system, which caused us to have to separate Narrows 1 and 2 units. We separated those units from the grid for the day, met our flows with our bypass valves, and restored the units at the end of that day. Lastly, in communications, Yuba-Net and the Appeal Democrat picked up our release about the flood risk reduction update and other items from our last board meeting. Yuba-Net also ran an op-ed from NID about the filing with the Supreme Court regarding the water quality certifications that mentioned us. There was also an article in the National Law Review that covered the grounds of the request. And the most fun we've had is the February issue of Comstocks magazine, which is out now, and it includes a story about the North Yuba Forest Partnership, and Joanna Lassard is featured in the article with a great photo. I'm also mentioned, but Joanna did a great job and stole the show there. In community relations, Joanna is also speaking about forest health on a panel discussion for South Yuba River Citizens League, and John James is currently traveling to Portland for the NWHA, that's the Northwest Hydropower Association's conference, and he's going to be on a panel talking about climate resiliency. And there's lots of sponsorships to share. We sponsored the Bacchae Festival this weekend. The Day for Women event is coming up on March 4th. The Farm Bureau Spring Fling is March 17th. And a new one, the Kokanee Power Fishing Tournament at New Bullard's Bar will include a fishing derby this year. And we're sponsoring that, and that's on April 1st. And we just committed to the lip sync battle, and we also have a group of employees that will participate in lip sync battle, and that's a fundraiser for the Shady Creek Outdoor School, and that's on April 8th. Our next upcoming meeting is a regular Board of Directors meeting on March 7th, and we'll also have an ABP meeting that day. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. So we'll move on to board member reports. Director Bishop, anything? Okay. Director Messick?
I'll just note that I appreciate the water agency supporting the Chamber of Commerce with the gala. I went. Charlie was there. You were there. Who else was there?
Seth was there.
Seth was there, yeah. As a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I just want to thank the support of the water agency.
Awesome. Thank you. Director Fear?
He doesn't remember me at the Chamber of Commerce, and he flaked out on me on Friday for the dam advisory meeting. Mr. Bishop, did you want to go to the Orville Dam advisory meeting on Friday?
This Friday.
This Friday.
I am participating in the water education.
In that case, I will be attending the Orville Dam advisory meeting. Very excited about that. And Say Love is having their cleanup along with Bacchae this weekend. So if you guys would like to go clean up litter, or prior, we are doing a luncheon and all that good stuff. So exciting weekend.
So could I just comment on that? I'm not flaking on you. They're sending me to new supervisor training. Although I'm probably untrainable myself, I have to go. And I will invite you Saturday morning to run with me in the Bacchae 5K run.
So I'm going to be cleaning up litter.
You can run first. You can run first.
And then I'm going to need a parade. Are you guys invited to be the parade director?
Yes. You guys.
You want to sit in our parade with us? Wayne? All right. I mean, I shouldn't invite you since it's Gary's truck, but Gary should invite you.
Director Matthews?
I hope to be able to participate in the Bacchae Parade with my wife's 1948 MG 4-passenger. And we've done it in the past. And we'd be honored to do it again. And any of the directors would like to ride with us, we'd be happy to.
Great. Director Blazer?
Willie, don't count on a lot of inflow Saturday or Sunday because of the Buckeye, because it never rains then, as you know. They kind of expanded the Buckeye. I'll just quickly run through that. Friday, there's a cruise. Then there's a 5K run on Saturday. The parade itself is at 11. There's a street dance. The lion dancers bless the businesses. And then on Sunday, there's a rib cook-off and a car show. So they have a lot. It's much expanded, but no rain Saturday or Sunday.
Great. Thank you. Just a reminder to the board, I know Dee Dee sent out an email regarding Water Education Foundation tours coming up throughout this year. If you haven't been on all of those and are interested and available, I would encourage you to attend. Personally, the Delta one I think was the most valuable for me that I did. But there's plenty of others that are valuable. The San Joaquin Valley was valuable. I'm sure the Northern California one's valuable, but I've yet to be able to go on it. And that's the one that's probably super relevant to us as well as the Delta. So anyway, check that out and attend what you are able to. With that, we will move into closed session as listed on the agenda. Does the board need a brief?
Recording stopped.
Or are we ready to just move back there? Yeah, we'll just move back then.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe with lessons, in person and personalized. Instruments including guitars and amps, horns, strings for instruments, and a myriad of music and sound equipment. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe.